DC Black Film Festival. Mr. Williams, how are you doing, sir? How have you been enjoying the nation's capital this weekend, man?
Enjoying the nation's capital, especially enjoying the film festival and watching the wonderful work of some of these filmmakers. It's joy, and then being able to have conversation with the audience who view the films and listening to their comments and insights, listening to the filmmakers' insights, and then there was a filmmaker social, and only the filmmakers are sort of part of that, and getting a chance to listen to them and inquire about their projects. It's a joy.
Excellent, excellent. And to take it a step further, to have a festival like this that is, in terms of its mission of focusing on uh, the voices of Black artists, filmmakers, actors, um, just going down the line of a lot of times with a festival, while it's nice to have your film have its light in the sun, it's even better in the case of this festival to specifically have it shine further light on Black voices. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm of a generation of people, of black people,
Yes.
who most often, when we did get to see ourselves in film or television, that was rare. It was a treat. I often, tell the story that, you know, we'd be in the kitchen having dinner and hear a black voice from the TV, and everybody would get up to go see,
Right.
which one or two or three,
Yes.
black folks who they would allow on TV that
Yes.
was. And then, of course, also, from a generation of black people who um, often watched stories that were at least claimed to be about them, told through a European lens,
Yes.
or a show that had to do with the continent or whatnot, and even in the last decade or 20 years, but at the center of it, are it's looking at slavery through a white lens, or the lead actors are white, or you know what I mean, or
Yes.
European, and that sort of
Sure.
thing. So
Sure.
a festival like this is an absolute joy.
All right. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that's a great segue into your film, and congratulations coming fresh off of you earning the award for that film. So, can you talk a little more about it and the process of getting it together?
I, I've directed a few features over the past three or 4 years. This was the first feature under my production company banner, and my first screenplay.
Yes.
Um, so, and it came out of a bit of frustration. I work all the time. I do a lot of work, but sometimes I feel like I'm not,
Present.
really getting something I can bite,
Yeah.
sink my teeth into. And so I wanted to do that. At the same time, I wanted to create very specifically a thriller, and I wanted to create something that could be embraced commercially, by a very targeted audience. And so went about that, got that done. And from having directed some other films, I had some relationships with, some DPs, and one DP in particular, Troy Bakewell, who had 3 or 4 cinema packages, trailers and trucks, what I mean? And, so, it's all about relationship, right? And so was able to pull this thing together. We had a wonderful, group of producers uh, who partnered with me, and we got this film done. We shot it in November in Atlanta. It was cold. We shot it around Thanksgiving, and we spent a good 6 months in post. Interestingly enough, our color correction was done in South Africa, as was our initial sound edit. Uh, yeah, and in fact, our color correction was done by a white Afrikaner. Now, and I mention that because I'm looking at folks' reels,
Yes.
and this woman, I looked at her reel, and she had all of these black faces of different hues in her different projects, commercials, and what I said. Well, this lady understands black
Right.
skin tone.
Right. Right. Yeah. Hey, people take that for granted. Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's an issue.
Yes.
First, if it's an issue for lighting
Yeah.
when you're shooting,
Yeah.
and then absolutely it's an issue in color correction and that and grading. And she did a wonderful job. Her name was Zana Barry. And then we brought the project back to the States and, did some sweetening in our sound edit and that sort of thing. Our editor was out of Alabama, a wonderful young man named Trey Miller. We had a great team. And so, the goal was to make sure the production values were on point from the very beginning and to make sure that the performances, what I prefer to call portrayals, were on point. Zaman Glasper, T. Denise Johnson, and some supporting actors did wonderful work. And I'm proud of the work. I certainly learned a lot in the midst of the work, and I'm ready to do it again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to close, I guess it's no secret to anyone your body of work of the longevity of your body of work, and anyone would desire to have that same body of work in terms of the career that they have been have had, whether it's just as you said, as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, as a actor, whether it's what you're seeing, what you're looking at behind the camera, or what you are bringing in front of the camera. What is the advice that you would give to said artists that are coming up now? I mean, there's a lot of I feel avenues that perhaps weren't necessarily available even 5 or 10 years ago. Now that we have things like YouTube and we have all these various platforms that people can utilize, but would you still say in thinking of when you were hitting the ground running that some of those still things still apply, or is it different?
Well, always the standard is don't quit before the miracle, you know, because, for some of us who come from humble beginnings, where being a filmmaker or an actor in film, mainstream film and television director, those things are, people in our neighborhood, people at the church might say, well, maybe you should preach. But, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with preaching, but folks always say if you can put two words together or whatever, well, then, that boy gonna be a preacher. You know what I mean? And thank goodness I had a mother who said, well, son, there are lots of different kinds of ministries, but and art is certainly a ministry. Here's the magic. Don't quit before the miracle, and understand that the game has absolutely changed. To maybe coin an overused phrase, today there are so many gates that the gatekeepers can't keep track of them. You see, for years there were gatekeepers in this industry who decided whose work would be exhibited and whose work would not, whose work was worthy and whose work was not. But now, because of streaming, there are all of these gates, and there are far more streamers than filmmakers would even imagine. There's a new streamer, for example, called African Diaspora Network. It launches in September. They're bringing on content now. There's a African American streamer in Florida called King TV. They're bringing material, and so many others. So to understand those who would keep us from our intended audience, they just can't keep watch over all the gates, over all the portals. So now is the time to ease on in. You see, and then as artists are taught that making money, oh my goodness, could be a sin. That art and principle and profit, principled art and profit are not compatible. Certainly they are. If not, only the bad guys win. So I say to filmmakers, look, your audience is there, and you can find that audience, and you can get in there now without having to ask permission to CBS, NBC, ABC, HBO, or BET. So shoot your shot. Do your thing.
Awesome, awesome. And I would be remiss not to bring it up. I mean, of course, you were bringing up streamers, and we are amongst a divisive time, to say the least, especially with actors and with writers, with the strikes that's happening right now. And in speaking to that, can you share what your perspective is on that? I myself am very aware of uh, everything that is at play. As you said, as a filmmaker, it's kind of a double-edged sword in terms of, as a filmmaker, being able to have these additional avenues, yet at the same time, as a performer and as a writer with a lot of these said entities, there is a major discrepancy there in terms of the profit, the profit sharing that's happening there among those artists, and being paid and compensated fairly.
Absolutely. As an actor, you know, right. The streaming dollars are meager. And see, I come from the days of television reruns where all summer you could count on them fat reruns. I think my first residual check from Remember the Titans was $20,000. Of course, my ex-wife got all that, but that's a whole nother story. But that first residual check, that was Blockbuster and DVD and VHS and all that sort of thing. So absolutely, this strike is important. The streamers need to be sharing more of the money with actors and certainly with writers. But remember, filmmakers create the content. That's a whole nother ballgame. So as an actor, as a writer, yeah, I'm definitely on strike and supporting WGA. As a filmmaker, there's nothing going on in terms of the strike that would prohibit me from making a film, putting a film into development, et cetera, and moving into that. What I'm finding is that a lot of filmmakers don't really know what's going on in terms of how to move their films in. You don't need a distributor. You don't need that. You don't need to pay 30-40% of your movie. You don't need to do that. There are now aggregators who have relationships with streamers around the world who you register with them, you put your material up, your art, all of the information about your film. They review it, and they're looking at quality control. They're not really looking at subject matter. They're not looking at any of that. And then they begin to pitch and to pair your work with streamers. It's called Film Hub. And it's a rather fascinating process. And that's what I mean by there are too many gates for the gatekeepers to watch. Filmmakers simply need to do their due diligence, not so much from an artistic perspective, but from a business perspective. Remember, this is show business, and principle and profit are compatible. If you can make money doing your art, then you can do more art and different kinds of art, and perhaps art then that doesn't have to be a success with a streamer or at the box office. But one can be an artist and still reach a target market. Remember, we're in a niche environment now. It's no longer where you've got 20, 25 million people watching a single show on CBS or ABC or NBC. Now, people are watching exactly what they want to watch. They're much smaller audiences, but because they're smaller, it's much easier to target and to market to those audiences.
Williams, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate you squeezing out some time here at the festival. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.